Hey, would you look at that? It's time for arbitrary number celebration in the form of a low-effort Q&A.
When the comeback of this silly fella?
Why, hello there. I don't plan on using the talking avatar often, but when I do, it's for production reasons. It's much easier to put together a video using this avatar when the script calls for abstract or difficult to find footage, so given that I'm not talking about specific games in this video, the avatar is back, at least for this one.
Hello.
Heyo.
How are you?
I'm okay. Coping with the current world events like everyone else, and I guess a little bit sad because I haven't seen my game dev friends in a few years since I still keep my distance from physical gaming events for the time being. But on the other hand, I'm having a lot of fun making videos for this channel and interacting with you guys, be it in the comments or over on the channel's Discord server. I'm also traveling these weeks, so my work and upload schedule might take a hit. Just a heads up. But overall, I'm good. Thanks for asking.
Will there be a fancy title screen in this video?
So I tried to have a... Wait a minute. I tried to roughly organize questions based on categories for the sake of having some sort of pacing in this video, so let's get into questions about the channel.
Why is your channel name Mental Checkpoint?
Because when you implement a haggling mechanic in your own project, you can come back to my video on haggling design, which would act as a mental checkpoint that you can go back to. Also, the word checkpoint has roots in video game culture, so it's kind of a play on words as well.
What does the logo mean?
It's a diskette, or a floppy disk. On one hand because I grew up actually using them, but also because they were adopted by games to represent save points and checkpoints. I made the entire channel's visual identity in a handful of hours at like 2 AM, so it is what it is.
If you could brainwave broadcast a message to everyone on Earth, what would that message be?
Stop pre-ordering games, Jesus!
What prompted you to make a YouTube channel?
So there's a lot of great channels out there about game development, but I noticed they fall into a handful of categories. You have the game devs making videos about the development of their games, and you have the channels analyzing specific games and how they're designed without any hands-on development experience. So I figured I could bring some value to the table with my development and publishing experience. I love sharing information, and I also think it's cool to cover niche design concepts using multiple games as examples rather than analyzing a single game. So I try to do that as much as I can. It also gives me a great excuse to keep my video editing muscles in shape as well as reaching out to developers for interviews. So win-win.
How did you learn to edit and what programs do you use for editing?
I used to mess around with Windows Movie Maker as a kid out of sheer curiosity, and later on I started making trailers for my games in Sony Vegas because big budget popular games had trailers. So I wanted to pretend I'm working on things that are bigger than they actually were. Nowadays I use everything Adobe when it comes to video editing, so mostly Premiere and After Effects, and I hate them.
What's your favorite animated show?
Nichijou.
Favorite anime?
Rick and Morty.
How do you make videos at such a fast pace?
By keeping all my ideas, research and scripts neatly organized and optimizing my workflow in such a way that I can focus on the creative decisions rather than the tedious grindy work. I also have a very small mental checkpoint team made out of a handful of awesome people that help me with the production process. Oh, I also don't sleep.
What do you do for a living and how you balance YouTube life?
After I released Move or Die in 2016, the game started generating money, which allowed me to hire people full-time. So I've put together a team of awesome people to keep Move or Die updated with fresh content, but also help out other indie developers with all the money and resources gathered by Move or Die. So nowadays, with the help of my team doing the heavy lifting, I juggle a little bit of game development, a little bit of publishing, and a majority of my time goes towards running this channel, with nothing left for personal life or socializing. So when it comes to balancing YouTube and life, I don't.
What's your favorite color?
This specific shade of mustard yellow that I use way too often. It's also the color of my company's logo.
Which video of yours are you most proud of?
In terms of mental checkpoint, I think I like the rhythm game video I made, probably because it was one of the first videos I've made for this channel, but also because a lot of research time and effort went into making sure it's a good video. I specifically like how that intro hits and the custom-made title screens, and I especially like it when I stumble upon an unexpected unexplored area of this industry, and I get to add a little bit of value, in this case trying to categorize the different types of rhythm games. It ended up being so full of info that I had to split it into 2 separate videos so they are easily digestible, totaling in over half an hour of actual content, which was a lot of work.
Do you want to branch out your content?
I would love to. I keep telling myself that I'm going to make time to learn some proper 3D and music production, but I haven't gotten around that yet. On another note, I would love to branch out this channel and bring over other awesome creators to cover topics adjacent to game design, like programming, art, and many more, each with their own channels dedicated to that discipline and with the same writing and video editing quality as Mental Checkpoint videos. Is that something you guys would be interested in? I'm genuinely curious.
How much do you think you will influence other YouTubers/game developers through this channel?
I hope a lot. I make these videos to share knowledge, so whenever I see comments about someone being inspired by my work, it makes me extremely happy. Like, legit, it makes me smile like an idiot in front of my monitor. I am myself inspired to do what I do by a handful of awesome developers and YouTubers, so as long as I know that someone's life is improved because of my work, then I will keep working.
Is this a good moment to transition into general questions about you?
Yes.
What was your first introduction to video games, like the first game you played or the first console you owned?
I was born in early 90s in Romania, only a couple of years after the country got out of its communist era. This meant that there were no such things as buying a computer or a console from a store. Everything was handmade and bootleg. So my dad, being an electrical engineer and obsessed with reverse engineering, put together a clone of ZX Spectrum based off of a bootleg schematic, which was responsible for one of my first experiences with video games. I used audio cassettes to load in games like School Days, and later on, when I got my hands on a Windows machine, I remember playing games like Superplex, The Incredible Machine, and Lemmings. There were no such things as Nintendo consoles in my country back then. Instead, we had the Terminator, also known as Ending Man, which was basically a clone of the NES and SNES in Eastern Europe.
What is your favorite form of sodium?
Monosodium glutamate.
Did you go to school for programming or game design?
Nope, I started making Flash games shortly before I started high school, based on literally trial and error. I was a kid, so I didn't really know English, so I just pressed random buttons in whatever programs I was using back then and see what happens. There was no such thing as a school focused on game development in my country, so I went to an architecture-focused high school where I didn't really pay much attention to the classes because I was constantly sketching and thinking about game ideas. I learned to make games by making them, and also from other fellow developers in this industry.
What are your opinions on the 3D platformer/collectathon genre?
Sadly, I don't have a strong emotional attachment to that genre because I haven't grown up with Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, or any of those genre-defining titles.
Also, speaking of genres, what is your favorite genre of video game?
I recently realized that I love games that either have time loops or focus on gathering information. Games like Outer Wilds, Return of the Obra Dinn, Devil Daggers, Hitman, Superhot, so on and so forth.
2 questions. Opinions on bullet hell and favorite type of music.
Bad Apple is the best music video ever. But for real though, Ikaruga is not getting enough attention as it should.
When did you, while working on something, know this is what I want to do for a living?
I never really knew that. I still don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life, and I think that's fine. I grew up playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, so I got into skating, and at that point in life I thought I would get sponsored and make a living off of skating competitions. Hell, I even put together a sponsor me video that will never end up online. Or maybe I'll publish it at 1 million subscribers, who knows. The point is that skate for a living lifestyle never happened. Later on, I got into video editing and I thought I would be a movie director. Again, never happened. After that, I started focusing more on game development and released Move or Die, but I haven't really made a proper game since then. Nowadays, I make videos about game design, and even though it's unlikely that I'll do this for the rest of my life, the important takeaway is that all of those prior experiences allow me to do what I do today. They are not wasted dreams, but instead they add up gradually to unlock new creations. It might not be obvious at first, but skating and video editing taught me a lot about making games. And now, with all those experiences combined, I can put together these videos at this level of quality on a regular schedule. I don't really know what I'm going to be working on in the next handful of years, and I'm not actively trying to seek out or predict that either. I just do whatever I enjoy at this moment, and I try to do it well because I know it will benefit whatever I'll do in the future. So for now, it's mental checkpoint videos.
Favorite junk food game and why?
It used to be Valorant not that long ago, and when it comes to why, that's because Counter-Strike kind of got boring after 15 years.
Least favorite question that is always asked in Q&As.
So I'm not a fan of what I call absolute questions. You know, the ones like, what was the best thing about that experience? Or what's your favorite type of so on and so forth. These type of questions are very difficult to answer because they kind of put you on the spot to call out an absolute thing or moment. So I try to avoid asking questions like these in my own interviews, and instead I would encourage you to add a little wiggle room in your questions. You can do that by asking what is one game you really enjoyed, rather than what is your favorite game of all time.
What is your favorite game of all time?
Portal.
Nutella with or without butter?
Finetti.
The guy that asks for door ratings asks, what do you think about your room's door?
I like it. It's pretty much solid wood. When I was like 20, I made this Portal-inspired chamber graphic to custom fit this door. I guess I could have done a better job with the rounded corners, but It's chamber 13 because the number 13 is considered to have bad luck in Christian culture, and 20-year-old me was an edgy rebel. It also has the companion cube warnings on it because my AC is basically a huge companion cube.
How does your favorite t-shirt look like?
I used to end up with a lot of t-shirts from gaming events that I either threw out or I don't have with me here. But my favorite t-shirt of all time is this simple black one called the Atlas Tee from Ministry of Supply. It's expensive as balls, but oh boy, it's comfy as f.
What color is your toothbrush?
It used to be white, now it's black. It's the Sony Care line from Philips I've been using for a long time now, and I've bought it at the recommendation of CGP Grey.
If you had to say one skill or trait which has helped you the most to get where you are in life, what would it be?
I would say curiosity. As a kid, I broke all my toys because I would take them apart so I could learn how they work and I couldn't put them back together. Growing up, I realized that I enjoy learning about how things work around me, so I adopted the mentality of know a little about a lot. I guess this helped me fall into the role of a game designer, and it's still kind of the mentality I cherish today. I'm not an expert at what I do, but with my limited knowledge, I can juggle the many disciplines needed to make a game from scratch or even put these videos together.
How many times do you think we can reuse this joke?
Oh my god, motherfucker!
How many different games have you made so far?
I think I made somewhere around 30 games. Some of them flash games, some of them mobile games. Some took 2 days to make, others took 4 years, and also roughly a third of them were never released.
How long did it take you to finish Move or Die?
From idea to Steam release, roughly 4 years.
How did you convince Critical to lend you his voice in Move or Die?
I've added an underwater mutator in the game to increase its moist levels.
What was one of your most favorite collaborations in Move or Die?
There have been a lot of collaborations in Move or Die since the game came out. We had character cameos from Rick and Morty, Newgrounds, Shovel Knight, Twitch, and Enter the Gungeon, and we also had game modes and mutators directly implemented from awesome games like Super Hot, VVVVVV, Heavy Bullets, and What the Golf. But I would say my favorite was our collaboration with Discord, where we added a bunch of characters when we made the game available on the now defunct Discord store, and I also got to make a trailer for that update, which was a lot of fun.
What is your favorite minimalistic game?
The Kingdom series.
How long did you make games before you had the success?
I've been making Flash games since the early 2000s, and now it's up to you if you count a soundboard to be a game. So technically I've been making games for almost 2 decades, which is concerning. And based on my definition of success, I feel like I achieved that with Kawaii Run a handful of years into making games. Now, if you take the more traditional definition of commercial success and money, then Move or Die would check that box, roughly 10 years after I started making games. The second part of the question asks,
did you ever make something you were proud of that flopped?
While I wouldn't call this a flop, I'm quite proud of the jump shot game mode in Move or Die. It's a mode where every player has a sniper that can only be shot when you jump. However, every jump is a front flip, so it's crucial to time your shot accordingly in order to target the other players. It doesn't really stand out as a special mode and it doesn't get a lot of attention either. However, I spent a lot of time designing and tweaking this mode to be an enjoyable gameplay experience that even has strategic depth baked right into it. You see, because each jump is a front flip instead of a back flip, it forces you to turn away from your enemy to minimize the time it takes to spin in order for your barrel to align with their position. And if you get a good feel for the jump timing, you can even start to deflect incoming bullets by shooting them in mid-air. I tried to add this amount of thought and depth into most Move or Die game modes, but I like this one in particular because I managed to make an entire game mode out of a simple meme, so I guess I'm a bit proud of that.
How much grinding in games is too much?
Grinding is not an inherently bad thing, as a lot of people think. In order to have awesome epic moments in a game, you need slow and calm moments, and that's where grinding can be used on purpose. This is the basic concept of contrast. If everything would be high intensity in a game, nothing would really stand out. So when it's used with purpose and in moderation, grinding can actually be a good thing for a game.
Do you have any wise words or a piece of advice for new or rookie game devs?
I do, but I'm going to answer this in a separate video and post it 3 months ago. You should totally check it out.
What's your favorite game engine?
The engine that requires you to reinvent the wheel as little as possible.
What element do developers think it's necessary but you think games are fine without?
Photorealism. I think video games have been limited in creativity because this industry set its goal to pursue games that are indistinguishable from reality. I mean, I get that it's a big selling point and players will be wowed by cheek hairs, but realism doesn't benefit gameplay, it actually hinders it by a lot. And it also exponentially balloons the development budget, so how about we shift focus from conquering the uncanny valley to creating more experimental creative gameplay instead. Errant Signal made a video on this 9 years ago and sadly not much has changed.
What's the best designed game you've ever seen?
Outer Wilds. It's the kind of game that executes almost perfectly pretty much all aspects of itself, from gameplay and music to impressive tech and writing. I might be working on a video about it, so make sure to stay subscribed for that one. In the meantime, you should go and play it. It's really good.
What are your thoughts on visual novels?
Kenji is best waifu.
What are some of the hardest parts of making video games and how do you overcome them?
Managing your motivation is probably one of the hardest aspects of game development, and people don't talk about it often because it's not directly related to game development. In my case, I used to live stream my work and regularly bring friends over to try the latest builds. When things worked out, I would get words of encouragement, which would be a huge motivational boost. So figure out what keeps your mood up and treat that thing with as much value as you treat game development itself.
If you could make one change to one AAA title without having to worry about scope or budget, what would you change?
I would banish quest markers because developers are relying a little bit too much on them.
Most hours spent on a game.
I have over 1,000 hours in Move or Die. Does that count?
Have you crunched for any games? How do you feel about crunch in the gaming industry?
I willingly crunch for basically all my projects, including these videos. I'm writing the answer to this question 2 days before the video is supposed to go live. The thing is, this is a sensitive topic because crunch is pretty much a bad thing every time, especially if it's a reoccurring thing in your workplace. Go check Noodle's video on this, it's very good. The whole industry pretty much agrees with this, except a handful of asshole higher-ups. So I'm aware that it's basically suicidal to publicly state in a video that crunch works for me personally. But I'd rather do that than lie. So given that I also happen to be responsible for a team of people working in my company, I make sure to never expect or ask my own team to crunch or do overtime. Quite the opposite, we're making efforts to actively avoid that. We don't have a limit on how many days off team members can take, and we're also beginning to experiment with 4-day work weeks very soon, on top of having flexible work schedules that are time zone conscious. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of weird to start making games in your living room as a hobby and all of a sudden there's like 15 people looking up to you as a CEO whose paychecks depend on you. So I try my best to make sane and ethical decisions for my team with long-term collaboration in mind rather than treating them like disposable resources that are replaced when they burned out. In the past, I did have people on my team that were crunching out of their own initiative, and as the owner of the company, I saw firsthand how that affects workflows and morale. Even if you do it out of your own will, it's something that affects the entire team because you don't work in a vacuum. Your tasks will snowball into responsibilities for other team members. However, when it comes to myself and my experience of getting shit done, I find myself being extremely productive while under pressure, which is also a side effect of procrastinating responsibilities until the last possible moment. So naturally, I take advantage of that and create an environment around me that benefits my productivity. Crunch works for me given my particular work style and position, and I try to keep it completely separate from the project my team is involved with. That's why it's not something I would recommend to anyone, mostly because it leads very quickly to burnout.
What game developer/dev team do you respect the most for their policies and track record of workplace attitude/games produced?
Blizzard.
Face reveal when?
Every Saturday when I do replay value live streams where I watch previous videos and I talk about ideas that didn't make it in. And in case you missed the live stream, I upload the VODs on Patreon. Oh, and I'm about to post an extended version of this Q&A on Patreon with a bunch of answers to some extra questions like
what was up with that whole Raid Shadow Legends sponsorship, the process of making these videos, and why I have a microchip in my hand.
So if you want to know the answers to those questions, patreon.com/mentalcheckpoint.
I will ask you this so you will at least acknowledge it. Who made the outro theme?